Do you want to know how to afford a house in Seattle? Well, you've come to the right place. My name's Christian Harris. I'm the team leader for the C-Town real estate team here in Seattle. I live, work, and play right here in Seattle and have for many years. So the way to get a hold of me and any information about this episode, it can be found down in the description below. So let's get into this. So I'm just going to come right out and say it. You really have about two options for housing here in Seattle. So you can either make the decision and commitment to buy, locking in your monthly mortgage payment, and then letting your wealth and appreciation increase. Or you could decide the house prices in Seattle are just too expensive and you're going to continue renting, knowing that your rent will likely continue to rise each year and your landlord will continue to build wealth off of the property that you are renting from them. So I bring this up right out of the gate because perspective matters. So yes, Seattle prices are expensive compared to most other cities in the country, but let's think about this as an investment. So if you buy a house in Seattle for say $600,000, and let's say over the next few years while you own that property, it appreciates 20% because the housing market goes up 20%, which is not unrealistic considering how much it's come up across the nation in the last few years. So let's say it appreciates 20% before you sell it. So you've just made $120,000 off of that investment. But if you maybe live in a more affordable area of the country and you buy a very similar house for maybe $250,000 instead of $600,000 like you would in Seattle, and let's say that market appreciates 20% as well. So you've just made $50,000, which is a big difference from $120,000. So now that I have that little perspective piece out of the way, let's talk about some of the myths around buying a house in Seattle. So down payment, that's often a big one that keeps people away. They think, I need 20% to buy a house. I don't have $100,000 plus laying around for down payment. Well, 20% is good because it helps you avoid a PMI or a primary mortgage insurance, which is a little extra if you put less than 20% down. The minimum you can put down on a conventional mortgage is 3%. So all you need is 3% for down payment. If you are a veteran and you have a VA loan benefit, 0 down, my friend. So really there's two primary options, that are quite affordable. 0 down for your veteran and 3% down if you've got good credit and you can qualify for a conventional loan. There's also FHA down payment assistance programs through the state and some other options. So we have that as well, where you have little or 0 down. Now granted, those are a little harder to get those offers accepted in Seattle because the market's so hot, but in the suburbs it's much more common. So for the down payment option, it's really not a huge barrier. So don't let that stop you from even looking into whether or not you can buy a house. So next, let's look at the next big objection I get, and I hear quite a bit, is it's too expensive to buy a house in Seattle. Let me ask you a question. How much do you pay for rent right now in Seattle? $2,500, $3,000, $3,500 a month? If you're renting a house, it's probably closer to the latter. That is a healthy mortgage payment. If you're paying $2,500 a month in rent, that roughly comes out to a mortgage payment for a $525,000 house. If you're paying $3,000 a month, that's closer to a $660,000 mortgage payment. So obviously there's some assumptions in there based on current interest rates, assuming 20% down, and some other factors, but it gives you a little bit of an idea of perhaps that home ownership isn't quite as far away as you think it might be. Let me tell you a story. In early 2020, COVID-19 shut down everything. I'm sure you remember it. It wasn't that long ago, and it changed everything. And in the real estate world, a lot of buyers said, whoa, wait a minute, I am just gonna stay put. I'm gonna wait for things to calm down. I'm gonna wait for the market to calm down. I don't know what the future looks like, so I'm gonna hold off for a little bit. So now we fast forward to 2 years since then, and the house prices have continued to rise by simple supply and demand economics. Since this time last year, home prices and values have increased by 13.6%. That's 13.6% they've gone up. So people that are waiting back then are now saying, crap, I should have bought back then when interest rates were lower and home values were less. So this cautionary tale is even more stark when I think back to some of my would-be clients from 2014. In 2012, home values started to recover from the 2008-2009 recession, so they started going up again. 2014 is when they really started. You guys hear that? My dog. In 2014, home values really started picking up speed and increasing by double-digit percentages year over year for 5 years. So now we look back and home values since 2014 have increased by nearly 60%. That's crazy. That's crazy numbers.
Wow.
So because they waited for the market to cool down, those would-be buyers are now forever renters. So they just simply got priced out of the market and they can't afford it anymore. Especially when you look at interest rates, they're starting to go up, and it's expected that inflation is going to continue to rise, which will only add to buying a home in the future more expensive. It's also worth noting that people who own real estate tend to have substantially more wealth than those who don't. A big portion of it tends to be because they invested in the real estate, and that has helped make them wealthy. Also, real estate is one of the best ways to hedge against the money diluting effects of rising inflation. With the trillions of taxpayer dollars that have been pumped into the economy since the beginning of 2020, inflation is inevitable. But I digress. I would also like to take this moment to state that I am not a financial advisor, nor am I an economist, and I cannot predict the future. Don't take my opinion in this video as financial advice. There you go, that's my disclaimer. Now, I completely understand the hesitancy and uncertainty associated with becoming a homeowner, and for many of us, the subprime mortgage crash of 2008-2009 is still ingrained in our recent memory. And I think because a lot of us remember that, a lot of us expect that to happen again. I get a lot of questions around, but when's the bubble gonna pop? As far as I can see, and most professionals can see, there is no bubble because there is no subprime mortgage crisis like there was then. It's simply supply and demand. There's just not enough houses available for the amount of buyers that want to buy the houses. And so that increases demand, which increases prices. Now, I get it, no one wants to buy at the peak of a market, but of course, no one actually knows when the peak of a market is gonna happen. And historically, real estate values parallel inflation, which tends to be about 3% a year, meaning that historically real estate values will continue to go up over time. Now, there may be a leveling off or a dip occasionally, but much like the stock market, real estate values will continue to go up. You also want to remember real estate is one of the few investments that has dual purposes. Not only is it an investment where you can build your wealth and equity, it also provides shelter for you simultaneously at the same time as you're able to build wealth. So first things first, if you're thinking to yourself, I wonder if buying a house in Seattle is an option for me, I wonder what my options are, give me a call. Information's down in the description below. I will put you in touch with a good mortgage lender who can crunch the numbers with you. It's great to do that because it doesn't cost you any money and it's not committal. So at least then you can know whether or not you can afford a house in Seattle, if the payments are going to work for you, and if that's going to work towards your overall financial and life goals. So the point here is don't disqualify yourself or count yourself out before you know the numbers. Talk to one of my vetted preferred lenders. They'll give you a straight answer on what your options are, and if they don't think it's going to work or it's not a good financial decision, they'll let you know. And if it's for you, I'll walk you through the property search and buying process one step at a time. So now what? Let's say you qualify to buy a house. You know what your payments are going to look like, you know how much house you can buy. Let's look at some additional options to help make it more affordable for you to buy a house. So the first option is to think about leveraging your space to help you pay for part of or all of your mortgage. So one of the things you can do is you can find a house that's a separate space that can be used for a long-term rental or for a more lucrative short-term rental like Airbnb or VRBO. You can look for a property that has a basement that has a kitchen or kitchenette with a separate entrance, which would be a great option for turning that into an apartment for long-term rental, which can help pay towards your mortgage. Or maybe if there's one room or a basement that doesn't have a kitchen, you can also use that as a short-term rental option, providing it has a separate entrance as well. And these options are considered ADUs, so attached dwelling units. You could also look at the option, if you've got enough space, of building or putting a separate unit. Those are called DADUs, or detached additional dwelling units, and those can be used for short-term rental options as well as long-term rental options as well, if providing they have a bathroom and a kitchen. So both those options can help offset the cost of your mortgage. And in some cases, not only can you offset your mortgage, but it'll actually pay for your entire mortgage depending on what the rent rates are. The next thing to consider when looking to make your house buying experience more affordable is look at areas that are further away from the urban core. They tend to be more cost effective. So typically, the middle of Seattle tends to be most expensive, and as you get out further, it gets a little more affordable. So maybe look at areas like Tacoma or South Seattle, or go up north to Linwood. Burien, just to the south of West Seattle, tends to be more affordable than West Seattle, or a little closer to downtown. So look at those options. You can also look at buying a fixer-upper. So buyers in this market are willing to pay a premium for a move-in ready or turnkey house. If you're willing to put in a little sweat equity, you can actually update your house or finish out a basement. You may be able to save some money in the purchase price if there's a little work to be done with the house, even if it's just doing cosmetic updates. So some people want to consider the time of year. You know, there are market trends, but it doesn't tend to affect the price of the house very much. It more affects the demand of the house, which doesn't always translate into a increased price. If you have flexibility on when in the year that you can buy, looking in the winter can sometimes get you a deal, because a lot of time, you know, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, a lot of buyers are checked out, they're on vacation, they're, you know, doing things like that. Typically, if a house is on the market during that time period, the seller is motivated and has to sell, and so if you're a buyer in that time, sometimes you can get a deal. Also, you might consider being flexible on the square footage. So the median price per square foot in Seattle is now over $517 per square foot. So to put that in perspective, the median throughout the US is $148 per square foot. So part of this could also be due to a lot of the Seattle homes are older, and older houses tend to be smaller in square footage unless they've been updated and had additions added to their square footage. You know, understanding that due to the nature of the price per square foot, smaller houses inherently have a higher price per square foot. That's just how the numbers work. So even if you feel like buying a home isn't right for you or right for you right now, and you want to do it maybe in the future, I'd still urge you to reach out to us at the C-Town team so we can help you flesh out your goals and make a plan for when you are ready to make the move and buy your own place. We can even help you create a budget so you can start saving for your down payment. We also have a first-time home buyer class. We call it the Beers and Home Buying. So buy you some beer, bribe you with some food, appetizers. We'll put the link down below in the description. In that class, we go into a lot more detail about what to expect and how the home buying process works. And lastly, manifest the shit out of that plan to buy a house. I'm a big believer in making a plan and visualizing that coming to fruition, and for you, that very well may be owning your next house in Seattle. If this video was helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate you watching. I'll see you next time.